All right, hello. Today we're going to be talking about learning different cultures, and this will be the first part of that assignment. Um, this really turned out to be a lot of fun, and it forced me to have a conversation that I would not have had were it not for this assignment. So, um, in the culture is the Indian culture, Eastern Indian. Um, and it's not that I was uncomfortable with the culture, but I was extremely curious and always have been. I was more uncomfortable with having to um, basically broach this conversation with Ben, and that is his name. Um, he is from an area in India called Jammu, and I don't. He just said, "Call me Ben. It will be easier for you." So that's what we're going to do. He owns and operates two dry cleaners here in Brownwood. Um, he arrived here in the 80s, and I asked him why, and he said political turmoil. And he said, and there's more opportunities here with much cheaper investment, and also that the universities were better. He said that the businesses such as he's in have become saturated in the region that he was from, and so it just it made sense to come here, get a new start, and maximize his investment. Um, and let me just say this: he's not your typical what you would envision as a business owner. He doesn't wear a suit, and very often I see him in there operating the press machine, and I can't imagine how hot it is in there. So he's hands on deck, always very friendly. I have done business there for several years, and he's always been extremely friendly. But we've never really discussed anything other than the weather or what's going on around town. But he was very open to when I explained the purpose of why I wanted to have this discussion with him, and he was very happy. He was very open. He got to laugh at me a few times, which is that's cool. Um, yeah, but he's a great guy. He's a great guy, and I think we really built a relationship because of this, and so I'm very thankful for that. So before I tell you about Ben in particular in our discussion, let me just give you a few facts about the population that we have here in the United States from Eastern India. Okay, they began arriving as early as 1820. And even from then to today, the reasons really have not changed, like the ones I had mentioned earlier: the political turmoil, business opportunities, and educational opportunities. They are now the second largest immigrant population behind our population from Mexico that have immigrated here. So they're the second largest population of immigrants. Approximately 75% of males and females over the age of 25 that are here have at least a bachelor's degree. Think about that. Most of them are employed in either business operations or in the sciences, such as doctors and that kind of thing. And there is a very keen entrepreneurial um, aspect with this population. They have a real ability to see opportunities, to create business, and operate them very well. And I'll talk more about what Ben said about his management style in a minute. Only 6% of that population that is here live below the poverty line. Only 6% live below the poverty line. So I think it's safe to say that they're a real asset to our country. Okay, now here's something interesting too in regards to religion. Only 50% of this population are Hindu. The other 50% is spread equally among Muslim, Catholic, and Protestant. I would not have guessed that. but I did my research and I saw. So, okay, now back to Ben. So I asked Ben, I said, before coming to America, what were some assumptions that you had about America and its citizens? And he said, of course, he said this was based on what other people had said, what he had gathered, from reading the newspapers, was that Americans are very selfish, self-centered people. He also said that he felt like that possibly family was not important to Americans, and that the food would be bland. And he's kind of right on that one. But he'll also tell you that in regards to selfish and self-centered, he said once he got here, he determined that there wasn't any more of that here than there was where he came from. And in regards to family, he still stands by that, and he feels like there's some groups of citizens that or cultures that don't appreciate and embrace family like they should, like his culture does. And I can see that, and it makes sense from a variety of different viewpoints. But okay, so I then explained my ignorance to him and stereotypes and assumptions that I have made and others have made, and asked him to dispel them for me. And he laughed quite a bit and agreed to, and he laughed several times through these questions. He told me he does not wear a turban, not even at home, doesn't own one. He said there is no Indian language. He said there are hundreds of language throughout that country. There is no Indian language. That was new to me. I didn't know, and I was guilty of thinking that someone would speak Indian. The other thing he pointed out is people need to know that India is not located in the middle of Iran and Iraq, and feels like people see a certain skin color and hear a certain accent and immediately put you in their minds in the heart of the Middle East, and that is not the case. He believes in only one God. I asked him too about old traditions such as arranged marriages and those type of things, and he says they are not as prevalent as they used to be, rarely practiced anymore. And he said that really those things, there are some very eccentric groups that are located in various regions of India that still participate in these type of rituals and stuff, but he said it's hard to find anymore. Of course, I'm thinking, snake charmers, and he says he's not a snake charmer and is deathly afraid of snakes, and he and I have that in common. I am as well. And he said he thinks that, and this was an interesting point, that the media is probably one of the greatest enemies of immigrants in this country, because like I had said before, particular skin color and accent, you're automatically grouped in with people from all these other different countries, even though you just simply share a pigment in your skin. So not all people are they shouldn't be grouped based on the actions of a few. He said we are not all Arab, we are not all Islamists, and we are not all terrorists. He said a majority of us want to be here to improve our lives and our lives for our families, and to give back to this country. And that really did hit home with me, and I appreciated him saying that, and that's very true. We do have a tendency to group people not by a specific geographical location, but by a certain accent in their speech or a skin pigment, and that's unfortunate. Now, on a funny note, I had the opportunity to briefly meet his wife because she was taking care of business while he and I were talking. And I said, she has, very different facial features, than you do. And he laughed, and when he could finally breathe again, he said, "That's true." He said, "Because she's Mexican." See, there you go again. The skin color thing, I made some assumptions, and man, was I wrong. So, anyway, I can laugh now. I didn't mention, his business and the fact that he doesn't act like your typical business owner, not dressed in a suit, not running things from his office. And have seen him in there running that pressing machine. Although he has, quite a few employees. And he said that he was taught early on the value of education and the understanding that you may need to educate yourself, not rely on others to do that. And he said too that the Indian culture in business, they have a trait to be very strong managers and to lead by example. He said that does not mean that we are hard. He said that just means that I am willing to do anything that I am asking you to do. And that I like that. I really do like that, and I think that any boss or manager or supervisor should be prepared to do that. It just makes sense. Okay, and then I asked him, I said, would you please tell me what you have learned and what you think is important now that you have lived in America for over 20 years? He said, I am clean. He said, I'm one of the cleanest people you know. And he said, the thoughts of Americans, even today, he says, is that Indian people, speaking of Eastern Indian people, he said, are filthy and are not clean and do not clean themselves. And he said, that is not true. That is not, that does not speak for everyone. So, and he said, we value personal space when we are speaking with someone. And he said, Americans like to get very close when they talk to you. I thought this was very interesting because I'm I like to read a lot about communication styles and that kind of thing. And I think we do get a little close, even with people that we may not be having casual conversations with, maybe even formal. We tend to get, in most cases I wouldn't call it offensively close, but at least an arm's length away for him was a minimum. And I thought that was very interesting. Also, he said time is important. We have the saying, time is money. And he agrees to a certain degree. He said time is very important, but it is not more important than relationships or interactions. And he went on to explain, he said, that is why I'm having this conversation with you. That really, I appreciated him saying that, and I think that's a good way to look at things. He also said that he knows he must be very specific when speaking here. He said, in India, he could be very indirect yet still get his point across because everybody communicated that way. But, I'll be there between 8 and 9. And he said, now I must say I will be there at 8:30 and be very specific. And he said it just took him a while to get used to that, but there was nothing wrong with it. And then I asked him, was there anything, have your values changed? And he said no, his values are still the same. Family, hard work, and tolerance. And I asked him, I said, what do you mean exactly about tolerance? And he said, forgive others and continue with your life. People and situations change. And he says that there's an old Indian saying that says you can never enter the same river twice. And I had to think about that for a minute. But it's a beautiful way to put it, and it's so true, because the water that you were in is now gone. And so now it's new and different water coming down the line. So take a minute and think about that. It's very true, and that's what forgiveness is and tolerance is. So anyway, really enjoyed this assignment, and that's all I have to say on this for now, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.